Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Many people will remember this image of General Chiwenga just a few days before the 2017 November military coup that ousted Mugabe. He was waving the constitution and claiming that the army was stepping in defense of the constitution. And so in the end, the coup was staged and the people supported it. And now the same individual is waving the constitution yet again. And this time he's claiming that Mnangagwa, by allowing corruption, is destroying a serious threat to the security of the nation, and hence the need for the army to step in. This is a double-edged sword being branded by Chiwenga. First of all, he is putting the claim that the army is stepping in defense of the constitution and the political stability of the nation as it did in 2017. And secondly, this time he's waving a dossier that details the corruption by Ziganandas. We should be clear here. This Ziganandas is talking about are Mnangagwa's allies. These are the men and women who are helping him, Mnangagwa, to loot the nation's wealth. He has been able to do a lot of things because he has got the money to do it. One of the things about corruption is that money that should be available for the good of the nation, the good of the Commonwealth, is now being diverted to benefit a few, the ruling elite. And since Mnangagwa himself is the one sitting at the apex of the gold mafia, the lithium mafia, the oil procurement contracts, etc., etc., he is the chief beneficiary of all that corruption. And he is then using some of that looted wealth to enable him to buy the loyalties of ZANU PF officials, state institutions like the army, ZEC, the judiciary, and even the opposition. What Chiwenga is doing in producing this dossier and saying these Ganandas must be arrested is a clever move, in the sense that if they were to be arrested, then Mnangagwa will have no access to all this looted wealth. The other day, there was an article saying that the nation is getting only 1% of the proceeds from the mining activities in Zimbabwe. 1%. The 99% of the money generated from the mining of gold, diamonds, lithium, you name it, is unaccounted for. And we're sitting at the apex of that, Mnangagwa himself. There is no doubt that Mnangagwa has become incredibly powerful because of the finances, because of Sugananda. So that has been Chiwenga's strategy. He realizes that as long as Mnangagwa is absolute control over this Sugananda, and Chiwenga himself, because Mnangagwa considered him to be a political threat, has been eased out of that cycle, of that circle of Suganandas. At one time, he was benefiting from them, but they must have got instructions now to leave him out. And the fact that they themselves, Gananda, realizes there is a power struggle here, they must have realized and made a choice that if they were to go with Chiwenga, they will be phased out. And so they've been going with Mnangagwa. And so Chiwenga, when he produced that dossier, he was trying to fight back. And when he produced that dossier on the basis of the 2017 military coup, he was also saying, well, if the army was justified in staging the military coup in 2017, it is also justified in staging a military coup now. What ZANU PF Politburo did was interesting. Mnangagwa is allowed, his Minister of Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, who is also ZANU PF Secretary of Legal Affairs, Ziyambi Ziyambi, to reply to the dossier. And what Ziyambi Ziyambi has done is twofold. Number one, he has sought to underline the fact that the 2017 military coup, yes, as much as it was the army where the tanks rolling on the street, it wasn't conducted by the army alone. Other people were involved. ZANU PF as a party, they were involved. The opposition was involved. The ordinary people, Povo, who flooded the street, they were involved. And business individuals were involved in the sense that they bankrolled that activity. And so to say only the army was involved is wrong. That is number one. But the second point, particularly the emphasis on Ugandandas were involved in the military coup of 2017, is important in the sense that he is now saying we cannot arrest these people because they were also involved in the military coup. They contributed to the success of that military coup. This has been a masterstroke in the sense that now Chiwenga finds himself in a situation where he cannot deny it. In fact, that point was also re-emphasized by Themba Muliswa when he did his video in which the number one focus on VP Chiwenga's connection with the so-called Shikananda. His historic connection with Shikananda and how much he has benefited. As much as VP Chiwenga can now fume and froth about Shikananda, the truth of the matter is he was one of the main beneficiaries of the corruption in Zimbabwe. He is as corrupt as they come. He is only trying to say something that he knows the people would gravitate towards. Yes, we want to see the end of corruption. He has never denied that he himself is corrupt because he cannot deny it. As much as Mnangagwa and his cabal would want to think they've all but neutralized Chiwenga, the truth of the matter is they really they've not done so. Because if we go back to the 2017 military coup, one of the key things that they did soon after the coup was that Justice George Chiwenga of the High Court was presented with a scenario where somebody could challenge the legitimacy of the coup. And they wanted to preempt that. And so Justice George Chiwenga ruled that the military coup was justified, legal, and constitutional. At the time, they knew that was nonsense because it is, even to this day, it is still nonsense. As Justice of the High Court, he is saying the Constitution allows the army to stage the coup. And yet, he cannot, and he did not at the time, and he could never be able to quote the chapter and verse in the Constitution that says the army can stage the coup, can deploy the army, or anyone, the general or anyone can deploy the army other than the commander-in-chief. And that is what made that a coup. The army was deployed by somebody else other than the commander-in-chief. And there is no way in the Constitution that says somebody can, it would be justified in deploying the army. So that judgment was actually nonsense. And yet that was the legitimacy of the Second Republic. What Minister of Justice Ziyambi Ziyambi is saying now is that, no, it wasn't only the army, or in this case here, Chiwenga and those around him that deployed the army. And therefore then staged the military coup. Others were involved. Are we revising Chiwenga's judgment then? That the army was justified in staging the coup. Now we are saying the army, in this particular case, General Chiwenga and his friends, plus the ZANU PF party, plus the opposition, plus the business, private individuals like Klakwashe Takwire played a role. They too were justified in deploying the army. That is nonsense. We can pretend that is the case, but in reality, it is not. The army was deployed by Chiwenga and company. And that was what we were told at the time of the coup. That was the legal basis for the Second Republic. Now they're trying to revise it and pretend it wasn't the army alone or Chiwenga and company alone. There were other people involved. This is just nonsense in the sense that we are now going into the realms of stupidity where a private individual in the street or even a member of the ZANU PF party can be said they are justified in deploying the army. The coup of 2017, the key event was the deployment of the army. Whoever came out in the street in support of the coup, yes, they played their role. But when push comes to shove, Duanam Chekadzafa. The ZANU PF officials who supported those who staged the coup, Duanam Chekadzafa. Takwire and company who bankrolled the coup, Duanam Chekadzafa. That is what we've got to accept. But as it comes to the army, the justification for the army staging that coup, the grounds that George Chiwenga tried to give the nation, that the army was justified, it was legal and constitutional, is nonsense because there is no chapter and verse in the Constitution that allows a coup. So let's be honest here. The Second Republic has always been illegitimate. And the other interesting point here that should be remembered is that The Second Republic had the opportunity to redeem itself by holding free, fair, and credible elections in 2018 and in 2023. They rigged the 2018 elections and they rigged the 2023 elections. Mnangagwa and his present government are illegitimate. That point cannot be overemphasized. The only reason why SADC and the AU, who condemned those elections as flawed and illegal, did not step up and deny the regime legitimacy is because the opposition had participated in those flawed elections on the basis of Chamisa's lie that he had blocked the vote-rigging loopholes. And so we have got now a situation where an illegitimate regime is trying to extend its illegitimacy by changing the law or overriding the law, demanding that there should be free, fair, and credible election, and in 2028, and in the Mnangagwa's case with this ED 2030 agenda, by denying the people the right to vote in that election. Mnangagwa is to remain in power without having to go through an election. And if he was to stand in those elections, he will be violating the constitution that says you cannot serve more than 2 terms. We wait to see what Mnangagwa's move is going to be. The party's conference is due to end today. And if it reaffirms the so-called resolution number 1, calling for Mnangagwa to stay on in power until 2030, we will have to wait and see how the party intends to do that. But let's be very clear here. As much as Ziyambi Ziyambi can claim that he has managed to silence Chiwenga with his rebuttal after he waived this so-called dossier demanding that the ZANU PF or the Shikanandas who are sponsoring Mnangagwa should be arrested. The truth of the matter is that is a Pyrrhic victory, to say the least. Because no one will ever be deceived by the argument that the army was deployed by Chiwenga and his fellow generals. The Second Republic used that as its foundation for legitimacy. And now they're trying to rewrite Justice Chiwenga's judgment to undermine that by pretending that ZANU PF leaders, individuals, opposition members, and Ugandans who contributed in that coup somehow had the power to deploy the army too. That is just far-fetched nonsense. The army was deployed by rogue Chiwenga and his fellow army officers around him. To pretend that somehow somebody else deployed them is nonsense. Yes, of course, they may have been influenced by cunning ZANU PF leaders like Mnangagwa. I've said on this platform, and I'll say it again, that as much as the army wants to pretend that they have been calling the shots, the truth of the matter is the army, as much as the police and all the other institutions, have been manipulated by cunning ZANU PF leaders. They've been allowed, encouraged to do idiotic things, and when it suited those individuals, they've been putted out. And this is what we are seeing repeating itself. Chiwenga staged a military coup in 2017, and those around him. As soon as the deed was done, Mnangagwa is systematically booted out all those around Chiwenga, so that now he is completely isolated and helpless. He did the dirty business for Mnangagwa, and now he is being putted out as irrelevant. That is the reality, the political reality in Zimbabwe. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.